Well, it's Christmas Day in the kitchen at Noblethorpe, 2022, and it's going to be my best Christmas ever. Why? Well, life's opening up for me. Olivia's coming. She won't be here for the Christmas meal next door, which I've been invited to. Wonderful family next door, the Hickeys, Noblethorpe family. 3 generations, love them all, and they've just welcomed me in. And they've only known me for less than 6 months. I moved here, maybe a bit more, 31st of March. But hey, we've just gelled and the relationship's not going to ever suffer. Even if I do something crazy, we're neighbours. We love diversity. Yeah, 1 or 2 of them are agnostics, others are, one's brought up a Catholic and such and so forth. Makes a difference. We're neighbours, we're friends. And we've got a great bond, a great understanding between us. And anyway, I want to talk about my meeting with Charlie Ward the other day. Yeah, Charlie Ward was a great character among the brethren who really went through tough shit, especially when you left, because he was kind of nursed into the brethren way of life too young, and got a brethren girl and had life on a plate and all looked hunky-dory because he hadn't got to work his way up. Her family had money, the wife's family had money, and so he was just nursed along. And of course, eventually things went belly up. And it's a wonderful experience tracing Charlie's journey through life. And he's written a book. Here we are. I'm just Charlie. What I like about Charlie, he's so honest and open about his own failures. There's no bullshit with him. Yeah, he's not had the perfect life that the brethren are meant to have. No, but he's learned from his experiences. And that is really what counts. Life, I've learned so much since being chucked out of that religion 6 years ago in March. And had to develop a far wider picture. At first I was there nursing my wounds and wondering what had happened to me. I'd been abused terribly by that system, but we're not here to go on about that. In fact, I'd like to bring a bit of humour into this session because I realise that I've laboured things perhaps a bit too much in previous videos I've done. So let's think of a joke. Oh, a joke I used to say, quite a short one, that I used to say, it was quite naughty of me when I was in the brethren, but I thought it was pretty good. How can you tell the difference between a terrorist and a wife? Know what the answer is? You can negotiate with a terrorist. No, I think that's quite funny. But when I was with my ex-wife in the brethren during the final year, she had made it very clear that her loyalty was to the leader, Bruce D. Hales, in Sydney. He invited her over to Sydney without me for a good number of weeks because Jed and his wife were there. I protested, but I wasn't allowed to go, although he did allow me to go across for the last couple of weeks or so before she came back. But the fact was that she had 2 men in her life and she chose the leader over against me. It's as simple as that. Now, things have opened up. God's opened things up for me as a result, but I thought that I was in that picture and that's as good as it got. And if I could be a good brother, by then I'd been rebuked in the assembly, so in a fairly difficult place and being told I couldn't do this and couldn't do that and couldn't do the other. So I realised that the potential I had in me wasn't going to be realised in that club. But then do I just settle down? And my son Jed said, well, if you stay, you can, we'll make sure you get a lovely house in a lovely part of Leeds kind of thing. And it's all, he just bought a massive place in Knaresborough, set on by Bruce and Jenny Hales and his father-in-law, Mark Bailey. And I just had to nod and make sure that money was there for it all to happen. No say in the matter. So I began to realise that I would just have to become a clone or a sheep, if you like, in the Bruce Hale system. But I did wonder, well, I suppose if I carry on and die, at least I've done my bit and they can say I've been a good father and good businessman, because that's pretty much all you're allowed to be. Hey, what? 40 years later than Charlie, I've come out as well. And I just love anybody that challenges bullshit, basically. And I would, just before I move on from the terrorist joke, I respect my wife and she can make any decision she likes. If she decides Bruce Hale's over against her husband, that's her matter. And I'm not going to press that at all, except I've been divorced. I'd like to reconcile with her, yeah. But the brethren make sure I can't, all of my family, all my grandchildren, anyone. But I would just make the point that although they've made me the victim, I pointed out I'd never had another affair, I'd never had an affair with another woman when they shut me up. But they got me for being unfaithful to my wife. But I actually am punching back and saying that actually my wife was committing what I call spiritual adultery. Now think about that, because her affections were with the man of God. And she was saying to another sister, Sandra Michelle, actually, who'd lost her husband, oh, I could see the love in his eyes. I knew he loved me when he looked at me. So he has that mesmerising power over women. And apart from Charlie, we're getting all these sad, incredibly sad stories coming out of Canada as to the abuse, the sexual abuse going on in the system that's meant to be the bride of Christ, meant to be Christ's assembly, covering up shit and nasty stuff and going on with high-flown words, you know, we love Mr. Bruce and all this, but not getting down to the real deal. That's really sorting out the shit. And that's what good people do. They don't turn a blind eye to shit. They deal with it, especially if it's in their own household or their own locality. And good people even get involved in wider things, even if they get into trouble for it. So we have to have the ability to decide whether people are good or bad. Now, Charlie is so likeable. I mean, the brethren could bring up things and say, oh, this, that and the other. He didn't pay support to his wife when she left him, blah, blah, blah. He has to go to jail for it. He's not the only one. Laurie Moffat went to jail, bless him, because he was protesting at some of the things the brethren were doing and protesting at the way they kept his children from him. So anybody that protests can find themselves not only in the hands of the legal system and the police, but in jail. So that is serious. I was in jail myself. Neil Christie, Garth's son, right up there with Bruce Hales and his sons, got me into jail for writing a letter, just resending my mistake, a letter about the family to the family. Why didn't he lift the phone and speak to me and just say what's all this about? So what we've got is a system that uses the legal system and the police on people they chuck out with no righteous basis to do so. Withdrawal is, in 99% of cases, abuse. It's just sheer abuse. Breaking up families for a distorted Christianity set on by the Haleses back in 1959, and with a figurehead of Jim Taylor Jr. as leader, is nasty. John S. Hales was known as Mr. Nasty in the early 60s because he used to stand people up in church and ridicule them and despise them and get them to say how much money they were making. Same with his brother Bruce, who the current leader was named after. Yeah, what a wonderful family. And they've pulverised my lovely family. We were a good family, and I want to reconcile with my family. I love my children, still do. And I've got my wonderful, lovely wife coming over with her lovely family. Super family. And we'd all like to get on as friends. And, you know, let bygones be bygones. The past is the past. But let my grandkids, Boyd and Zoe's grandkids, Jason and Heidi's, benefit from my experience and my love. And the fact that I'm their grandpa. My life's been wrapped up with those kids. I've been writing to Bruce Hales for 5 years now, asking to have my kids back. Also making it clear I want my business back. What's he do? He uses the legal system, has my family spending close on probably more than £1.5 million, and me close on £1.5 million, fighting. Yeah, fighting, family fight, and he stands back and says, oh, the family have fallen out. Lance has been unfaithful to his wife. Start speaking the truth, Mr. Hales. This is the issue that I've got, is that there's a whole sea of lies going on. And then if you can defame me or Charlie Ward or anyone you like to name, Peter Harrison, Gerald Cowell, Henry McGackie, if you like. You can just defame them, say they go to hell, say they're heretics, and if the families believe them, the brethren believe them, and you've suddenly got a gang of 55,000 people all pointing the finger saying, you're bad, we're good. Oh, you don't quite use that language, but that is what it boils down to. That is what separation is all about. You're putting a big wall up and saying, we are the pure people who can judge. Christians don't judge. Mercy glories over judgment. I once preached after Roger Kirkpatrick, the doctor, and I've got some awful tales about him and young people, but we won't go there. But I preached on James, mercy glories over judgment, and I looked to him afterwards for a little bit of ratification. He didn't even understand the scripture. I'm sorry, but that is a precious scripture because Jesus has died on the cross. That was mercy, glorying over judgment. Beautiful. Now I'm going to play some clips from Charlie's Mscs media podcast come video entitled Dr. Charlie Ward from a strict religious cult to mover for the world's governments. He's described as an author and online sensation looking for truth. Charlie's got 27.5 million followers and he's left the brethren. That must be a record. He's doing something right. He's engaging with the world and people are listening to him because he speaks the truth. And yeah, he's been defamed by the brethren, but so what? Christ was cast out from his own, wasn't he? Yeah. And I'm sure Charlie wouldn't thank me if I tried to make out he was like Christ. But within our measure, if we set out what's Christ-like, just by standing for the truth, that is good. That is brave. That takes courage. So I applaud that.
And with our lives the way that they are, God has a wonderful way of shutting doors for us, right in our faces. Even though we're pushing to go down a certain corridor, he'll stop us and he'll open other doors because you and I are the sort of people that are receptive. And as much as we might be trying to push one way, inside us there's a little boy that goes, "Do you know what, we should do this," and that's you can see it in somebody's eyes. You can.
Now here's a man who's had dinner with Donald Trump, who's actually acknowledging that God was speaking to him because he was ill. But he had the presence of mind to work out what he needed to do himself to take up his own responsibility. And that was he stopped drinking and stopped smoking. Brilliant. I wish tens of thousands of PBCC members would listen to Charlie. If they stopped drinking, they might say, "Oh, we don't smoke, aren't we good?" Tackle your issues, right? The issue, one of the main issues in the brethren is the amount that's drunk. You say, "Oh, you used to drink, lads?" "Yeah, I enjoy a drink." But if God's speaking to you, you've got to listen. And I don't want to claim anything, but I had dear Richard Story, brother of Ray, homeless, and he's been living with me for the last 3 months, I think it is. And he was smoking and drinking, liked his drink, was having too much, and he would admit that, just like Charlie. Anyway, the most effective thing for me to do was to stop drinking when he came. And if he could see that I could cope without drinking, hopefully he gets the message. So we empathise with one another. We don't judge. Please, don't ever judge somebody that's not up to your standard. That's what Christ has met all that. The whole spirit of Christianity is underpinned by forgiveness. I've got this issue with not just the exclusive brethren or the PBCC, but brethrenism in general. It's far too judgmental. They seize on people's failings. That's not good. That's not good at all. Christians can do it. Have a very strong, heartfelt conviction that other people, especially Muslims, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Scientologists, they're all going to hell. What does that mean? That the brethren are all going to heaven. So it's superior attitude. Thank God that I am not as the rest of men, right from square one. It's wrong. We're never going to shine the glad tidings from the bottom of our hearts on people if we despise them. We respect people, and that's why we go out of our way to help them. That's just compassion. Compassion is a fundamental basic feature of Christianity, set out so beautifully in the Good Samaritan in Luke 10. And the priest and the Levite, there's plenty of priests in the brethren. I had 27 dour, sad, miserable visits built between Boston when Hales turned on me and them shutting me up and taking me away from my family. And then they have the temerity, that's the word, to turn round and say it's all my fault. Yeah, sowing discords and all that stuff. Don't know what they mean, leading parties. There's no fact, it's just lies. They make believe and they persuade the crowds of brethren, sheep-like brethren, who are potentially drinking too much and being abused in an abusive system, so they're not in any fit state to judge. But then if 55,000 brethren turned around and judge you because Bruce Hale said you're a bad man, and consequently the hierarchy in your place and across the UK say you're a bad man, and persuade all the people across the brethren, including those that love me, or Charlie, or whoever it is, it's not a good system, because good people don't cause any harm. I was just listening to Peter Hart of Wellington, New Zealand, who's been kicked out 2 years ago, on one of the podcasts, Get a Life podcast. I advise all brethren inside to listen to dear Richard Marsh, ex-Cambridge, ex-Regina, I think he was, and he moved over kindly to support a small meeting. We were destined to move to Philadelphia once, about 2002, and then The Hague, or some new meeting in Holland, 2000 and, I don't know when it was, 2011. But why have all this moving around? But I think Richard went off his own conviction and managed to get validation for it. But they just turned on him and tried to kidnap him. So these people who've been through real experience, and Richard is very calm about it, just had a lovely little baby. I know his wife, sweetheart. But listen, get a life. Also, James DeFiore is running podcasts in Canada land, very accredited source in Canada. The brethren need to be aware of what's going on within their own ranks. They're making out that they are judging evil people like me and Richard and others, but they're accommodating evil within their own ranks. So it's false. It's a false system. The only thing I can think is they break down this wall and start communicating with people that know the truth. That's their only hope. Let the glad tidings shine in from those that they've hurt. It's wrong to hurt people. If there's a doctrine that causes stress and distress and suicide and dividing of families and taking away of businesses, taking away of whole social circles, you're left, at best, half a person. You can't cope. You say, oh, you've coped? Well, just through mercy. But they didn't want me to cope. No, they wanted me to be in the gutter. That's what Mike Hughes said about Jim Hutchinson back in the day to me. He said the only way for him is to wake up in the gutter one morning, crying out for help to him. How good is that? We do not want the gutter for anybody. Rather than put them in the gutter, take them into your home and nurse them back to health. Mending and healing, that's Christianity. Recovery, setting people up as though they'd never sinned. They'd never done anything wrong. It's just so obvious, isn't it? Are we kind? Are we showing a little kindness when we see our brother under the burden of whatever he's under? If someone's drinking too much in that system, it's because of the system. The Haleses promoted Jim Taylor in 58 as a man that loved a drink and advised people to take bottles of scotch to him in New York to help him take up the responsibility. What did he do? Dubbed Gerald Cowell a rival, defamed him overnight, and then there was a whole culling of ministers right through the early 60s. And then in Simonton's era, Mafala, 1972. Shocking. I'm standing here because my father was a lovely man. Peter Hart was able to say that he never hurt anyone in the brethren. I can say that. If they want to construe that I've hurt them or that I'm causing them distress, the truth, if it hurts, accept it. Truth comes first. Truth is dominant, not whether it hurts me or not, but to introduce a doctrine that causes untold distress, divides families, and causes psychological turmoil because people try to work out what's happening and can't because it's bullshit. It's not right, it's not fair, and needs to stop immediately. And good people in that system need to stand up to the hierarchy and say you're wrong. Oh, Mr. council says it's all right means nothing. You've got your own conscience. You should never join an assembly to hurt anybody. I'll open that up to scrutiny, that remark. But that Christ has died to set us free. I was set free when the brethren shut me up. I didn't know I was being until after they'd withdrawn from me. But I was beginning to see the light sufficiently and reaching out to people, lovely people, like Jackie Hart, who made herself available to help me. And later, a lot of other lovely people, Guy and Margaret Wilson from Margate. And there's a few brethren members, Peter Harrison from Palmerston North, New Zealand, one of the greatest men I've ever met, who clearly carried the true line of the truth down from JND's day. Oh, you say he was buried by the Quakers. So damn well what? Religion isn't the be-all and end-all. He was a true man, hanging on to the truth, and I hold his teachings dear, and I would love the brethren to publish his writings. Bruce Hales happened to refer to a letter he wrote, quite disparagingly. We both wrote letters in March this year. And at the London meetings, I think they were in April, he referred to them and about weak strokes of a pen or something. Maybe those strokes of the pen are strong strokes of the pen. And Bruce Hales is having to say they're weak so that 55,000 brethren believe that they're weak. Read them for yourself. Read the letters. Ask Bruce Hales to show you the letter and give you a copy. He's perfectly capable of using his system of UBT to give copies of the letter that I wrote in and Peter Harrison wrote in this year with all the attachments so that the brethren can judge for themselves. Otherwise, they're a bunch of bar sheep. Yes, sir, 3 bags full. Bruce Hales says we do. That is not clever. It's dumb, quite frankly. And you're worth more than just barring amen and saying your conscience is moved in assembly when you don't know what you're doing. So people are very quick to tell you what's wrong with you, but I just get on with life. You know, just, if people want to slander you, well, get on with life. Just, school kids, they roar with laughter sometimes about their school teachers, don't they? Idiosyncrasies and the way they talk or whatever. But that's just kids, and perhaps the brethren need to roar with laughter a bit when they consider how ridiculous Bruce Hales is these days and Garth Christie. Let's bring a bit of humour to the situation. As far as I'm concerned, I might as well tell you my health issues. That's what Bruce Hales told my son, Jed, at Boston in October 2014. Lance is deteriorating, he meant mentally. And he told Pacey. Mark Bailey said, the fact that I'm mental was as blatant as the fact that Jed, has got one leg. And that happened in an awful accident, which the brethren are telling lies about. The fact is that Bruce Hales, the current leader, told me to take full responsibility for the accident because the judiciary would have sympathy for me because I'm the father. So I went and took full responsibility for the accident and sustained the costs of all a new leg right through until I was chucked out. And now apparently it's the responsibility of Weavable, because Bruce Hales had me put the expenses through the business. I'm not sure whether that was right or wrong, but these things will all come up for scrutiny. Shining a light into the situation is vital. Anyway, what's my problem? What was my problem when Bruce Hale said I was mental? My problem was I couldn't work out what was going on. I was doing what I felt was right, according to my link with the Lord, or according to my conscience, or whatever, however you want to say it, because I was compassionate and I love helping people. Even now, people ring me in distress. Sometimes they want emotional support and comfort, other times they want money. And I've been had a number of times. Well, if you're deliberately asking people for money and you're never going to pay it back, or have no intention of paying it back, plus interest potentially, don't be asking them for money. Be honest. If you really are in trouble, yes, come forward. Ask people with resource to help you. But so many people that have left an abusive system are abusive themselves. They're actually abusing you by asking for money because they think they'll catch you at a weak moment and steal your money, in effect. That's really what Joseph was doing in Genesis when his brethren were up against it. There was a famine in Canaan, Israel. So they went to Joseph in Egypt and with money. And he gave them grain to take back, to enjoy with their father. But he put the money in their sacks. And then he sent his team out to probe in and find out where the money was. What was he trying to do? He was trying to help them to arrive at it themselves that they had stolen money. He was making out that Benjamin was the thief by putting the money in Benjamin's sack. He knew exactly what he was doing. And he hoped that by the time the brethren had thought, that's Benjamin's brethren, older brethren, had thought about what he was doing, that they would realise that they were the guilty ones. But what do? We are all honest men. Facade. Fake. Pharisaical stuff. Making clean the outside of the cup, but within dirty, horrible, nasty stuff. So be honest. That's really the appeal. Be honest. So what's my problem? My problem was that my brain was contorted because I was trying to work everything out that was happening. There was John Hale's ministry, which I stood to, and still do to a large degree. I don't think he was a far better man than his son, seriously. But he said for instance, there should never be any needless exposure. So matters confessed certainly matters where there's failure in a moral connection should all be met and ways found. But then what I'm finding out now is that Bruce Hales piles in the judgment on some people and lets other people off completely who have done far worse things. So there's no common denominator. And he says that his system is greater than the judiciary system. So he actually mocks the judiciary system and uses the police and Parliament for his own ends. Manipulates them. Parliament? Yes. The British government? Yes. And the police and lawyers, the whole shoot bang, and gets his poor victims who are one against 55,000. So, one person's earning against the earnings of 55,000. And a lot of them very, very, very successful businesses, all contributing to Hale's system. So he thinks that he can just win the day with numbers, bullying, coercion, and all these nasty bribery, all these nasty things. A good person will never bribe anybody. It's completely wrong. A good person would never hurt anybody. A good person would never take anyone's money. So we just need to calmly assess where we are. This is not a protest. It is a protest, but it's not born out of any malice. It's just born out of the need for justice and fairness and the spirit of guilelessness, reconciliation and care, which should mark every Christian if they are a true Christian. The trouble is there are so many fake Christians who pretend that they've been converted, pretend that they are going on with right things, and they're not. They don't even know the forgiveness of sins. They wouldn't treat people the way they do if they did. So there's an opportunity to get on our knees and just ask the Lord to help you see where you're at, and then be brave. The Lord will come into your situation if you're open and honest. Maybe you haven't been honest for years, maybe decades. Well, it'll be a massive relief if you're honest before God. And then you emerge with a sense of the divine, sense of what's greater, the sense that God is closing a door for you, as Charlie said in the video, a sense that he's opening up another one. Have faith. Move from the broad way into the narrow way. Move from your comfort zone into a way of purpose, a way that you know is right in your inner being, in your gut, if you like, and requires some sacrifice. But be prepared for that. I've had to be, because Bruce Howes has been trying to take all my money away, trying to turn me into a criminal, trying to put me behind bars, which he did a couple of weeks ago through Neil Christie. Why? So I'm no longer in any trouble. He wants me to die as quick as possible. I guess he wants Richard Marsh to die as well. Why? Because he can then carry on with his way of things, his twist of scripture. He's a con man, so it's his pretend Christianity, and carry on convincing 55,000 people that he is the Paul of our day, the elect vessel, and all this other nonsense that he doesn't even strike a match against Paul. Not the slightest. He doesn't strike a match against previous leaders we've had in the Brethren. And I won't name them now, but certainly the first three leaders, well, I don't like to even, they wouldn't like to be thought of as leaders exactly. Christ is the leader. But those that took on particular responsibility, like J.N. Darby, J.B.S., F.E.R., C.A.C., J.T. Senior, these were men who fought for the flock. They may have done some things wrong, yes, but fundamentally, they cared for the flock. I'm questioning whether we can say the same for Jim Taylor Jr., James H. Symington, John S. Hales, and Bruce D. Hales. But I didn't question John Hales when I was under the sound of his ministry, but I have to now. Because of, you judge a tree by its fruit. Look at the fruit of John Hales taking the leadership. In fact, I would suggest the brethren should look into the politics that went behind John Hales being installed as universal leader after Symington died around 1987. The reason that I accepted John Hales was because he was humbled about his history. He was a humble man. He'd been withdrawn from 3 times. And so we accepted him because of his humility. He and Bruce Hales, it would appear, and certainly Bruce's son, maybe not him so much, have turned all that round and now saying he's sinless. There's a whole volume of references in Bruce Hales' ministry, basically idolising his father. And yet, they exterminated my father, the same system. My father was every bit as good as John Hales, better. So one falls the wrong side of the hierarchy. They hate one and love the other. Why is that? Because it's run by a man who's a con man. Men shouldn't be running it. It should be local assemblies running their own administration, not going to Bruce Hales, who says withdraw from Lance Christie, shut him up, or whoever. No, it should be the local Brethren Lees fearlessly, without fear of retribution, deciding whether I'm so bad that I need to be banished into the outer darkness, dead, and my photograph taken out of the photograph albums, and anything I've written, meetings I've taken, withdrawn, because I'm a heretic apparently, and sowing discords, deranged, and just a complete disaster, complete write-off. Come on. Whether you want to use humour, brain, whatever, just start thinking straight. Common sense, FER, and Charlie Ward, and a host of others, Symington, said, I think that common sense is the first principle of Christianity. Charlie didn't quite put it that way, but I put him, he may not want to be in their company, but common sense, come on, common sense. You don't take a father away from his family. You don't take a man away from his wife, or a wife away from the husband, because the husband or the wife doesn't tick all your boxes. No, you work in an open way to communicate and negotiate and arrive at common ground so that we can all go on happily, reconciled. And the desire for reconciliation is perfectly pure.
Whatever it is, and you know with the Italian side, they're very spiritual people, always have been. They're connected. When you connect to what's within you, right now, you'll need everything. You'll need all your spiritual connections. I liken it to a toolbox. That when you get your first toolbox, you only use your screwdriver and your hammer, that's it. Then you find out you've got a socket set and pliers and pinches and everything else in there that you didn't know you had. And that's where we're at right now. We've got a socket set, we've got a toolbox inside us. And one of the biggest tools that we've never used in our lives is hope. And hope is within us, and it's been dumbed out of us. And when you can reconnect to what's within us and get hope back, then everything else becomes possible, and you start seeing things. And when you start seeing things, it becomes exciting. Right now, I'm probably in the most exciting time of my life. I'm not living in fear. I'm not scared of anything.
So what Charlie's saying is connect to the spiritual side in you. Connect to the greater. You won't be fearful then. We tend to play to the crowd. Why not be true to yourself and make a stand for what you know is right? Face the fear. Yes, I've had to come to it. I'm Lance Christie, and I'm going to speak the truth. No bullshit. Why? Because I've got a right to state what I feel about things, just like you have. So, don't be put off by officials, politicians, soldier-type people, policeman-type people who just stifle the spiritual and try and turn you into a regiment of zombies or robots that have to do what the master says and dance to his tune and march. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How boring. When you're surrounded by those type of people, you become like those type of people. and you're stifling your own potential. Just take a leap of faith. God's great. Look at the universe. You can't take it in where we see a little small portion. Our own little miserable silly worlds are pretty pathetic, really. Why stay trapped in your own situation? Why just do what somebody else says? Because you're fearful, that's why. If you analyse it, you're scared to be true to yourself. Scared to be true to Christ. Scared to be like people were, warriors in scriptures who took the devil on. David took Goliath on. Yeah, he knew what he was doing. He aimed his stone. Maybe you've got to aim a letter or a word, a well-chosen word, to actually overthrow evil that you know about. Maybe you need to be brave and go to the police about your sexual abuse or your psychological abuse. Maybe you need to go to and I had to do this, to a lawyer who's not connected with the Brethren. Went to a lot of trouble because I knew that the Brethren had influence on the legal system. And I've been to certain lawyers, oh, we already work for the Brethren. If you're against them, we can't work for you. One of the first firms of lawyers I went to when I was in the Brethren, I said, I've got this major problem that my son Jed is against me and I'm trying to run the business. But the religion's behind him. They said, number one, Lance, don't ever take a religion on. That's the very thing that I've had to do. They said, work with your son to mend relationships with him. I tried. I went back and tried, but it was impossible. Why? Because he'd been poisoned in his mind about me by the religion, and members of his family who the religion had overseen had become connected to him through marriage. So I tried, failed. I just could not get any free father-son dialogue going between the two of us because of the religion. So I've had to take on the wider power than just my son. And I'm quite sure that things will work out in the end. That's a spiritual. Once you go with the flow, once you make a step, the Lord stands by you. You feel a force outside of yourself. I didn't have any training in legal things. I had no training in how to cope when being shoved out of a cult at all. I've had to learn it as I've gone through. I was shoved out, I think I was 61. Stayed in when I was 16, shoved out when I was 61. Thank you. But it's been for my blessing. So I've had to learn to coordinate the moral with the legal. So if a lawyer says don't take a religion on, hey, what about the moral? If it's a false religion, if they're speaking untruth, if they're tearing away families, tearing away businesses, you have to do what you have to do. If you have to take a religion on, you have to take a religion on. And then you have to work out who in the religion is causing the trouble. Well, I knew it was Bruce Hales. That's why I've been to his house 7 times to try and get some dialogue going on the basis of Matthew 18. But, hey, it's his hierarchy as well. Yeah. And they'll get me into trouble for this, but if I dare to compare the situation in Germany in the Second World War, it wasn't just Hitler. It was the Gestapo. It was people that went around killing the Jews. Today, it might be people going around excommunicating people and taking the families away from them. Psychological torture, psychological death. So we need to have the ability to work these things out for ourselves. And once we've done that, we can't be dormant about evil. We can't just say, well, these things happen. If you saw somebody molesting somebody, would you do anything about it? If you saw a burglar put a brick through a window and take some jewellery or whatever out of a shop, would you do anything about it? Are you a wimp? Are you interested in making the world a safer place? Are you interested in bringing honesty to bear where there's corruption? Are you interested in righteousness? Do you mind whether you're unrighteous or righteous? Are you prepared to bribe people, intimidate them into doing things they shouldn't do, into even confessing things that they should never have to confess? How awful is that? The interrogations that prisoners of war were put through by the enemy, shocking torture. Well, torture of the mind is pretty shocking. Anybody perpetrating that sort of thing should not be in a position of power or control or leadership. People that torture should be locked up. Of course, in the glad tidings, as repentance is always available. That's the beauty of it. If you believe in God, you repent. And if you've hurt somebody, you can put it right with them. Yeah, that's what we've got to do. And that's why I'm insisting that Bruce Hales, who was a multi-billionaire with his family, shoves the money back in compensation to those he's hurt. That's only fair. Of course it is. I stand for fairness and justice. If you hurt somebody, you've got to put it right. Not just say sorry for a convenience and carry on as though nothing's happened, but put it right. And this world understands the value of money, so he has to pay money in compensation for hurting people. Absolutely. And so does his hierarchy. Absolutely. Otherwise, they're going to carry on with a burden of guilt, if they're Christians, over them. None of us want that, because we just reach out to the cross of Christ and find forgiveness. So easy, so simple. But if you're so steeped in a system, or systematic evil, you might say, that you can't get out of it, it's very difficult to simply say I'm wrong and throw yourself on the mercy of others. But there's nothing safer, actually, because that's why Christ died. And good priests, I don't like the term, would actually empathise and say, hey, I've done that, I understand. But that doesn't mean it doesn't need meeting, it needs facing thoroughly. And you won't be happy until you've got all that shit out of you, out of your system, and you're back to the pure you, the real you. So you can step forward and be an ambassador for Christ, ambassador for good things. You can help your religion to report evil to the authorities. You can work with the police, say we can help you because I've seen somebody next door taking drugs and getting into a difficult situation. That, you might say, that's splitting. Yes, for the help of all and for the help of the society and even the person that's taking the drugs. Absolutely helpful. And that's what good people do. Good Christian organisations work with the authorities. They don't waste the time sending them up wild goose chases and putting wrong people into prison and spend time in courts fighting family battles, which should never be, because the religion is exerting itself over the over the family, and the same things happens with business, that massive court battles over ownership of business. I had it, and it was pointed out that the partnership and shareholder arrangements that I signed, which said that if I left the religion of the PBCC, I had to sell my shares, was illegal, because it doesn't meet with the equalities law. Or we thought that all this stuff we were signing had been processed. I wasn't invited to see a lawyer independently. So, of course, I thought the brethren were right. So went along with this nonsense, which says that you've got to sell your business if you leave the religion. That is coercion. That is trapping people in a religion when they need to get out. You should never bring pressure on people to stay in your organisation. And as far as the PBCC are concerned, it needs to reinvent itself radically, completely change the fundamental the fundamentals so that it's a upfront, open, transparent, accountable organisation which opens everything up, including assembly judgments, even priestly visits, to the authorities, the taxpayers paying and supporting you because you're charitable. That means charity means being kind, simply. Just be kind to people. You say, oh, we go on the RRT and give sausages out to help firemen and rescuers. No, that's all looks very wonderful, doesn't it? But no, if fundamentally you are causing damage, you're actually undermining yourselves by going to these organisations. And I'm sure a lot of you people don't know that they're doing that, so it's not that they are bad in themselves, but you've got to look at the system you're in and check that you are getting the full truth and nothing but the truth, so that you can make your own judgment. And you're not getting narrative which supports one side of the story being the inside story and not giving credence to anything that I'm saying or others who you've excommunicated. You are responsible because you have excommunicated us. We are just the victims, if you say. Not that I regard myself as a victim, but we are actually the victims of assembly judgment, which is very punishing, very hard and cruel and potentially fearsome. But let's not fear. Let's move on and let's grasp life by the nettle and move forward and be happy because we're assured that what we're doing is for the good of all.
And then we walk into an office with this elderly lady sat behind her computer with her glasses on the end of her nose. And she's processing somebody in the office. Then she looks up and stands up and comes over and flings her arms around me. Said, come with me. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Wow. I bet you weren't expecting that one.
I wasn't. She said, 95% of my staff, Charlie, are with you. But they can't tell anyone. She said 40% or 50% are on the Insiders Club. But she said, we can't tell anyone. But thank you for everything you're doing. And then I had pictures of about 4 or 5 of them in her office. But that tells you we're being lied to. You know, we believe that Chicago it's got everything to do with what's in your pocket. That's why people vote. And when Trump was in office, people could afford to buy food and petrol, or gasoline as they call it here, and could afford to go on holiday, could afford to do things. Now I don't care who you like or don't like. People can't afford to heat their house, to drive their car, to feed their families.
Now just think of that. This was a high-up government official in immigration telling Charlie that 95% of the staff were with him in what he was doing in protesting against the system. But they weren't allowed to tell him. The truth was coming out. Maybe you're in that situation. Maybe there's somebody you're sympathetic with and you do support inside, but you're not allowed to give expression to it in what you say. I know that when I was in the Brethren, I once doubted Mr. Symington, the leader, when he was walking down the aisle at Bristol. He was slewing, and I thought, this guy can't be man of God. Just for a fleeting moment. But I felt bad about it in my conscience. But that's what I was really thinking. And I went to the leader, Oliver Smallton, and just confessed that to him. That I thought that. Yeah, my thoughts. Just confessing the thoughts. Very serious. It makes you feel as though you're a complete failure in the religion for doubting the man of God. So it's important that we give scope to our instincts. And this woman encouraged Charlie to keep going, because she was really saying, you've got a whole lot of silent admirers. And, but the system is so strong that, well, they're not allowed to say anything. I suppose they'd signed Official Secrets Acts and a few other things. And, but we want people to bravely say what they feel because they've worked it out for themselves and come through some experience. We stand for truth. If it comes to a choice between truth and supporting a person, it would be so much more comfortable for you to just go with the person if they're in complete control. But be true to your instincts. Be true to yourself. There should never be a situation where you're afraid to speak the truth. The truth is always dominant. It certainly should be. Whether it hurts you or not is secondary, if relevant at all. If the cap fits, wear it. If you've got an official system that's aloof and detached and making you do things that are against your instincts and your conscience, which are God-given, get out from under the influence. Make a stand. What you'll find is that, as Charlie said, you'll conclude that you're being lied to. If I'm saying something different to what you've heard, to the narrative you've heard in your family, your business, your church, look into it. Call me. Cut through the crap. 074 8855 0001, that's my phone number. No good person's going to get you into trouble for calling me. If I'm saying something that isn't true, please tell me. That's scripture, isn't it? If you've got something against your brother, go and see him between thee and him alone. Matthew 18. If you've got the guts to do that, come and speak to me. We can resolve things. There's no chance if you stick a big wall up between you and me and say we're not going to communicate. I wrote into my local brethren in Leeds, all of them, pretty much. And I entitled the letter, Communication versus Excommunication. They're two complete opposites. I stand for communication. The brethren stand for excommunication. Yet we can get rid of people and leave them as though they're dead, cut them out of our lives and carry on happily ever after. I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm still Lance. I love the title of Charlie's book. I'm just Charlie. I'm just Lance. And if you can't cope with me, well, analyse the reasons. Have I really hurt you? Oh no, but we've been told that you're hurting others. Look into it. I've not consciously hurt anybody. I tell the truth. If the truth hurts, that's permissible. If I blow a whistle on evil, that's okay. You should be doing the same. That's the basis of the true brethren position. That they deal with evil, but they're not. So it's a sham. It's a show. It's make-believe. They're conning you. I actually rang and reported to Bruce Hales that Oliver Smorden, the lead in Leeds, had told 5 lies. I thought that he'd instruct him to be dealt with or shut up like others have been done. He made me feel stupid for even ringing him about the matter. Why? Because he's accommodating lies in his organisation. Simple as that. Lies is very serious. If I don't speak the truth, I'm not reliable. Nobody should depend on me. If I speak the truth, line yourself up with the truth. I'm not the issue. The truth is the issue every time. So let's just consider the teaching of Scripture, the teaching of the legal system in our countries, the difference between right and wrong. You see, if we're in that drunken stupor, we can just be manipulated by people that haven't got the best in mind for all. That's no good. So start claiming your life for yourself. Speak the truth. Question things. Don't accept defamation of individuals unless you've had it witnessed and proved for yourself. If you've got 50 people all saying that someone's bad, don't believe it unless you've seen the evidence. What is the evidence that this person is bad? I'm saying that G.R. Cowell, Gerald Cowell, back in the day, was right. So if you're saying he was wrong, and rival to what? If it's a right statement, he's right, it's got to be rival to Scripture, rival to the truth. To say that he was rival to Jim Taylor Jr. is a load of nonsense. Cowell had been asked to take those meetings, not Taylor. Taylor intruded into Cowell's meetings. Oh, we haven't been told that before. No, we'll just get hold of the meetings. I've got them. I can send them to you. Be brave. Ask me for a copy. Read them for yourself. There was meetings in New York the week that the John and Bruce houses were drawn from. And Jim Taylor blew on the commercial system 30 times in that meeting. And he was exposing the Hales brothers for having manipulated the brethren when the brethren thought that they were being validated by Jim Taylor himself. He made it very clear that they weren't. And he had them withdrawn from at the end of that week. So look into the history of the ministry if you're using ministry and what was published in the notes of that time. So that your thinking is challenged. I'm saying that the fact that the ministry is not open to the public and hasn't been for ever since JT Jr. came onto the scene is a big exposure because it's dodgy. There's dodgy stuff in there which cannot be open to the public. Quite happy to have J&D, FER and the rest up to JT Senior, but not the Haleses, not Jim Taylor Jr. and not Symington. Why? Why? Because it's not open to the scrutiny of the public who are supporting you. So there's some things that need looking into here. And right across the whole way that business is done and the way that political links were utilised by the brethren to gain PPE contracts. But that's another story for another day.
You know, the way you're talking now, and, you know, after having read your book, it's amazing how you are at this point now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're born in England, right? Yep. At 4, you get pneumonia.
Yeah.
Your mom comes in, tries to take care of you. What you bring? One of your favorite
Lucozade. Yeah.
What was it?
Lucozade.
Lucozade. Yeah. And then you get through the pneumonia. And then you're raised in a religious cult, which is very interesting. Mm-hmm. And it was called what? The
Plymouth Brethren.
Yeah, I want you to say it, so I don't. Thank you very much.
That's
for
okay.
Not making me look like a complete idiot.
No.
You know, when you're raised in that, the first thing I want to ask about, what was it with the fillings? They gave you fillings for no reason?
Well, what happened was, most people when I was a kid would go to a decent dentist. But because my parents believed that the end of the world was coming, that was sort of too expensive. So there was a school lorry, well, you call them an RV here, that was the mobile dentist that came to the school, but he was cheap. So whenever you went to him, rather than do anything, he'd just drill a hole and stick a load of crap in your mouth. And it was cheap. So as I grew up, as I got into sort of my teens and 20s, I had so many fillings around my mouth. It was ridiculous. And when I started questioning things, that was one of the things as to why did I have so many fillings? Why? What was wrong? I brushed my teeth every morning, every night. So why? Didn't make any sense. So all of these things now become more and more relevant. That I've now spent, what I did was quite a few years ago now, I had all of the fillings taken out. And I had them replaced with white fillings rather than the metal fillings. And while they were doing it, I had some chips on my tooth from when I was a kid when I chipped a tooth on a bottle. My bottom teeth were not particularly straight, so I had them straightened up and had things done.
We all love the dentist.
Exactly.
That's the favorite one, right?
Exactly. And it made me realise, first of all, I was getting it all done after the world had ended, according to the Plymouth Brethren, because they always said it was going to happen by the year 2000.
So is that what that cult believes?
Yeah, that's what it believed.
And what are the three? What was it? The 3 steps of punishment. Like there was 3 types of punishment.
Well,
right? Growing up in that.
Yeah. First of all, you get a telling off, and the second one was being sent to your bedroom, and sort of for a period of time. But the one that, if depending on how naughty you were, you had to confess your sins to a priest. Now it felt not nice at the time. Because it felt very perverse that they wanted you to tell you why. Like, we were looking at naughty magazines, and they wanted to know what we saw in the magazines and even at the time, you just go, why are you asking these questions? It didn't feel right, and this is where, when you're connected to what's within you, if you get told off for something you've done wrong. I've had the cane on my backside. I've been smacked across the knuckles. And those things, I've accepted those. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with castigation at all. None at all. If you've done something wrong. But the punishment should be appropriate. But standing there in front of it's almost like a pervert priest who's asking for details about what you saw in these pictures and what it was about it. And you just go,
aren't you a priest?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It didn't sit well with me, even when I was a young child. And they also like to do it in the church so everyone could hear. And I think their theory was that you'd be embarrassed never to do it again. Well, that sort of putting down people in public, I disagree with 1,000,000%. I think if you've done something wrong, I actually don't believe you need to tell anybody. I think if you put it right with God yourself, God's the person that can forgive you, not them. They don't even need to know.
And if not, at least pull the person aside.
Yeah.
And talk, because they're going to, if you want them to change, they're going to be more comprehensible privately versus, 20, 30, however many people staring at them.
Public humiliation.
Yeah, public humiliation.
Yeah.
Make you go off yourself is what that does.
It does. It does. But what it did to me is now I look back in my life and I'm grateful for that because it made me understand why God has put me on this journey right now. I look at those bumps in the road and I realise that I was tested for a reason, so that now I can help other people through a difficult period of time right now. But there's been many things in my life that I'm now grateful for because they were the foundations of what we're going through right now.
If you could give me 1 or 2 stories, just for those watching who can, and I want to hear them too, obviously. When you're in that cult, from say age 6 to 16, what is it like? What's the beliefs? Are you homeschooled? Are you allowed to be in sports? Can you go to dinner? Like, what can you do? What can you not do? And what is the goal of the cult? What is the full belief of the cult, and so on?
The basic teachings of the cult is very similar to Baptist teaching, but it's very, very strict. You go to church every day.
Every day?
Every day. Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday morning. Sunday morning, there's 4 different church services to go to on a Sunday. So there's 4 on Sundays.
Was that your favorite day?
Not really. No.
Just joking.
No,
4 in a day for a kid? Whew.
I know it was too much, but when it came to schooling, when I was in the religious cult, we went to normal school, but we had to come home at lunchtime because we were not allowed to eat with other children or drink.
And I'm sorry, and what was the reasoning for that behind it?
There was some scripture in the Bible that you were not allowed to eat with those that
Like public people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't celebrate birthdays. You didn't celebrate Christmas, Easter, anything like that. And that was always difficult. And you weren't allowed. We weren't allowed to do sports competitively.
Wow.
In fact, my uncle, David Henry, he was a hurdler. And he came out a year before I was born because he wanted to go to the Olympics as a hurdler. And he came back with a gold medal.
Wow.
In Tokyo in the Olympics.
Unbelievable,
in the early 60s, yeah.
Wow.
But they wouldn't let him compete, so his father took him out of it. So they're not allowed to do that sort of thing. They're very clever in the fact that the community side, the fellowship side is very good because they keep you tight knit in their big families and then you all just mix with each other, not with other people. They're very supportive as a family unit. They look after each other well, financially, emotionally, everything. They're a strong unit. Also, they live in detached houses. They can't be attached to any other people. They have to be detached. They have to have their own water supply, their own electric supply, everything like that. They have to be completely independent. There's a lot of good things. They don't have a television because they regard it as a pipeline of filth into the house. Well, they were pretty accurate with that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, that one not too bad.
They got some things right, for sure. They didn't read newspapers. They didn't. A bit like the Amish, a cross between Baptist and Amish almost. They were very, very strict. They at school they said there was no point in the educational system at all. You needed to read and write and do the basics. You didn't need to concentrate particularly, because the end of the world was coming, and that was the. Yeah. And there's a part of that that's half right.
And I agree with him also that
you can see as Charlie goes over his early experiences and assessment of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church that he is unapologetically truthful. He's kind of naughty, isn't he? But we love him for his naughtiness. Why? Because he's honest. There's no make-believe. You'd have thought he was a Yorkshireman, the way he calls a spade. He just says it was very strict. But he doesn't discount the whole thing. He picks out bits of good in his journey and processes that and uses the experience to convince us that that's why he is what he is today. There's no bullshit. And how great a service it is to shine your light into evil, to expose it. That's exactly what Paul's teaching is towards the end of Ephesians. Shine light into dark places. And that's what honest people do. They can't help it. They get involved. They don't put the toe in the water and say, oh, it's a bit hot, and pull it out again, or cold. They get in and sort out shit. So, yeah, I like Charlie. He's all right. He's not everyone's cup of tea. I'm sure I'm not. But one thing he doesn't like is priests. Oh, I share that. And to publicly humiliate people in church is wrong, was never right. He disagrees with that 100%. So priests, if it needs priests, and Charlie is absolutely right. I mean, fancy perverted priests going through the details of what he saw in a magazine at such a young age. I mean, is that going to endear you to a system? Parents may need to pull kids up to save them from going down a slippery slope, of course. But that's family, and it's done in love. There's not punishment attached, generally. It's a matter of pointing children in the right direction. To think that my parents were taken away with me when I was 16. They gave me a good background in the truth. My father put himself out to serve the brethren, right until he was booted out. And I was amazed as a little boy. I would sometimes put my head over the bouncers, listen on the phone at the bottom of the stairs. 52082, Leeds 52082 was our phone number. And brethren rang him in distress and he put himself out. And then suddenly the leader comes along, finished, out. Why? Because my father's honesty and transparency and compassion, readiness to serve others, was a threat to the leadership. Because the leadership wants to be in control. Simonton was the new man on the block. And he had to be in control. He said, my mother was an insubject woman. Well, these statements, if the mother's a bit unsubject and she's got 4 kids to bring up every now and again, don't write her off as an insubject woman and have her withdrawn from by your own Gestapo. In my parents' case, it came out later that Henry McGackie rang Martin Edwards. It's time to deal with Leeds. He was under Simonton, clearly. And then Martin Edwards went to Oliver Smaldon, who he knew was against my father anyway, and they brought the master to assembly, withdrew from him in September 1972. Of course, devastating for the family. Never recovered. My father never recovered, really. So it's so sad, the damage that can be done through so-called priestly activity. It's not at all. And the point is that perverse things need hiding. Work things out yourself. Yes, if you hurt somebody, put it right. And that takes guts. When you're 16, you have to go and put things right. And I did it myself and got some other people into trouble through doing it. But because the motive is, if you go and if you hurt somebody, you put it right. Like Zacchaeus. If I've taken anything from any man by false accusation, I return it fourfold. Now that's the spirit, the generous spirit of the glad tidings, as opposed to the demanding, punishing, taking, stealing, prejudiced, nasty spirit of religious people who act like officials and treat their flock as though they're robots without feelings. Why? Because they haven't got feelings themselves. Narcissistic and psychopathic leaders should never lead anything, not even their own families, certainly not a church, because they're unfeeling. They almost take delight in hurting people. It's that bad, yes. I know that when one another has been withdrawn from, they've been made a spectacle of. Not only in assembly, but outside you get gangs of abusive young people throwing missiles and casting slander at people because the man of God has said that they're bad. It's an abusive system with an abusive leadership, and the whole poison has gone through the system so that when people leave, they don't know anything other than to abuse. So if a church is bringing up abusive people, the government need to intervene, and the police, and all these legal forces that are so expensive. They've got to identify moral outrage as well as legal outrage. Can't channel everything through the legal system. There's just got to be a spirit of working together with the government forces because we respect them, because they're a terror to evil. I've written to Michelle Donnellan, the cultural minister, who's got responsibility for religion, and been very straight with her. And I've written to her brother inside and told her told him that she's got a responsibility to be a terror to evil work because of her position in the British government. So I hope she stands up to it, because she's got links with ex-brethren and brethren. And I'm worried that there's some underhand stuff going on that needs exposing and the light shining on it. And whether it affects the future of the Conservative Party or the brethren, we'll leave that to be, but expose it. It needs exposing. If you've done wrong, admit it. Resign if need be. Because we cannot have corrupt people running our countries, running our families, running our religions, running social circles, running businesses, abusing people financially, psychologically, saying people are mental and writing them off, and giving them too much to drink, and just turning them into mush, basically, so that they can't do anything for themselves.
Both you and I, we're emotional beings, and the one thing I've done is just put my faith and trust in God and let God lead me. It's like when I go on stage and talk, and like when I came here, I pray that God will just use me to deliver the message correctly, accurately, as best I can, and that I won't misinterpret. I won't say I don't care. I don't mind if people misinterpret me, because there'll always be people out there. If you've got 27 million followers, if 0.01%, that's 27,000 people that can misrepresent you, great. It happens. You just have to accept that, and you just have to put your faith and trust in God that He'll guide you to try and get the truth out as best as possible.
Turning that bullshit off saved me money and a headache.
So wasn't that amazing? What a upbringing. Somebody said, when they listened to Charlie, the twats can say whatever they want. I know Jesus loves me when I hear Charlie's voice in my own consciousness. Thank you for being such a voice of reason, Charlie. He ends up by giving us the formula for getting control of our situation, getting out from under abuse. A wretched man that I am, a wicked man that I am. Every morning we were told to say it. I thought of it, but I just didn't do it as a matter of rote. But what Charlie was teaching us was to realise that you're worth something. You're valuable. And walk the talk. Don't just talk about it in meetings and take readings about being a good person. Walk the talk. Do it. Just do it, as the slogan goes. One of the best slogans of recent times. And don't just read the scriptures about Christ and, oh, what a lovely story. No, the idea is that we imbibe the Spirit of Christ and in our measure do what He did. What better model? Not Bruce Hales. No. Not Lance Christie. No. Do what's right and be a man and get a grip with all the stuff that goes on in our lives. That's what separation's about. But I remember Charlie, I mean, he was quite the lad. We were amazed. He did get Hannah, I think she was called. His wife was a cracking looking girl. I can witness that. And quite how Charlie did it. Because he's not exactly the best looking guy in the world, is he? But it's his personality. And that openness, that honesty. And the way he so honestly goes over the fact that he had a feather-bedded introduction to his married life, supported by her parents, lovely people in the Isle of Wight. You know, I'm worried that a lot of brethren are just being looked after by Bruce Hales. Take the women. And I love the sisters and the women in there, old and young. But they've not had to work. My wife-to-be has had it tough. She's had to bring up 3 children and work as well. So that's more challenging, isn't it, than just being looked after by the leader, Bruce Hales, so you don't actually have to work as a woman. And it's easy come, easy go. You get right through life having kids, and every woman wants a child normally. There's nothing special about that. But generally, the women don't work, and it makes them very vulnerable, very susceptible to influence. So Bruce Hales comes along through his priests and tells my wife that I'm a bad man, tells my sons and my daughters. Very easily done when there's no education, there's no awareness in the Brethren schools of cultism and narcissism and psychopaths. Nothing like that taught. No. Things are taken out, and they're not allowed to go on to university. They're not allowed to go and learn about the maladies of society and how that unscrupulous people can manipulate you and start financial scams and manipulate whole environments and cultures to serve their own ends. But the Bible's very clear. The Bible's very clear. There are many sisters in the Bible who did extremely well, did the hard stuff, did the hard yards. Even the woman in John 4 who was a prostitute, she was so converted that she went to the men of the city, her abusers, you might say, and said, come see a man. He has told me all things I've ever done. And that's the conversion that can occur. So she didn't go dormant. And I'm worried that there's a whole sea of people. My wife was suddenly ejected to being the marketing director in my business. Why? To basically make out that I was no good and she was, and I had to go and all that stuff. I was mental and stuff, couldn't run the business. It's not right to... My wife wasn't allowed any education. She left school at 16. And yet she was ejected into a business that she'd never worked in. I mean, it's ridiculous. The whole thing's crazy. It doesn't make sense. So I could say a lot more, but I think Charlie has been over the whole situation. And let me just say that the wards were lovely people, genuine people. We had one of the ward lads, who I got on well with, Mark, came and found his girl in Leeds. Lovely, lovely guy. But the wards don't thrive in the Brethren environment with all the rules and regulations, their personalities. We had Chester, Jim Ward's son. Jim died an alcoholic, poor man. In Leeds, he married Cilla Burrows, that's Dr. Burrows' granddaughter. Lovely, Burrows are lovely people, but they were suppressed in the Leeds church. Dr. Burrows was a psychiatrist, lovely guy. I used to get on so well with him. I went to the local cemetery not too long ago, found his gravestone there. So he died. The brethren don't tell me. I used to do so much for that man. He used to go around helping people in their minds, because there's a lot of mind problems in the brethren. No wonder, with a level of control. So I think I know enough. I was just saying about, I remember her getting married. When Charlie came up, it's a meat yard girl, and the meat yards are lovely people. And that's the other thing, arranged marriages. That should never be that a leader or so-called arranges marriages. That's a matter between a young man and a young woman. He seeks out his bride. And then, in the brethren, they all have to go to the leader for validation. And I'm quite sure that his hierarchy controlled marriages under him. Oh yeah, certain marriages have been stopped, and the girl who comes from a good family, maybe with a bit of steel, a bit of personality, a bit of character, is fixed up with a guy who's in the hierarchy and is going to carry down the teachings of the leaders, not scripture so much, right through the generations, so the poison continues, yeah? Whereas others, who are a threat, who might ask questions, are palmed off with not so good people. I'll just say something which really does annoy me, that Bruce Hales went to Mark Bailey's house. Mark was terribly abusive to his father, John, lovely man. I could tell you more, but I won't. But he said, according to the Baileys, that I was a bandicoot, that was a rat. That was in 2002, December, I believe. Then come 2004, I should think it would be, roughly, or 5. The hierarchy and Bruce Hales arranged my eldest son, Jed, to marry a Bailey. Bailey's was struggling financially. We had a very good business. So I'm worried that that match was not a match in heaven. It was done for convenience. And of course, the month after Boston in 2014, in November, I get a phone call from Jed, who'd been to the Universal meetings with Bruce Hales, saying that I must transfer £250,000 into his account. So I can't just do that, Jed. His share in the business wasn't even worth that. Oh, Mr. Hales says so you've got to do it. I just couldn't understand it. I didn't do it. So I was actually standing athwart the order of the man of God. Very, very serious matter. So he had it in for me, right through. So we raised some issues, and then I dug and found out it was for the Baileys, because True and Bailey was moving to New Zealand and they wanted to buy them out. They could use my money to buy them out and settle everything all nicely and sweetly. Not only that, but partnership and shareholder agreements were drawn up, which were wide open for the Baileys to drive in with a horse and cart and take over my business. So get me out of the way, put Jed in charge, who was absolutely manipulated up to the hilt by Bruce Hales, and then the Baileys can get the business from this bandicoot. I put my life and soul into that business. I was building it up for the family, not for Bruce Hales, not for the religion, certainly not for the Baileys. I had to go down to Baileys and advise in their business to try and help pull it round. It was that shocking, terrible stuff. So Christie's and Baileys were matched up. Yeah, Jed didn't even know the girl. I can assure you of that. So I'm absolutely convinced it was an arranged marriage. And it really, really annoys me. Simonson got involved with Smiths and Siddifins getting married in Peterhead to build up the small meeting. But the whole Aberdeen fiasco needs reviewing, because I believe that the true brethren left, and we need to go to them for guidance and counsel and wisdom, and have the grace to review the whole Aberdeen episode. Anne-Marie Knight married Adrian Smith. That was another disaster, utter disaster. They've got some lovely kids, don't get me wrong, and all things work together for good to those that love God. And that's really what Charlie was saying. We learn from these experiences. And if we can come through these difficult times, we won't regret it, because we've learnt the hard way. And that is real learning. That's experience. And we do need experienced people. I've grieved the loss of Peter Harris of Palmerston North. My mentor, really, a wonderful man. And the brethren need to get hold of his ministry and publish it. He speaks about practical matters like taking responsibility, conversion, accountability. What is conversion? Very simple. Being converted is a change of mind. you can change your mind. If you're on a wrong course, you can change onto a right one. And God will look after you. That's faith. If you do what's right, you will be in touch with the greater. And you'll get a sense of confirmation as you stand for what's right. And you'll be a man. You can stand up among thieves and just state the truth. Tell them to be honest. And you'll have immediate influence for good. Potentially over thousands of people. Just try it. Step forward, prove yourself. Don't be just a pawn on somebody else's chessboard who could just take you with a bishop or a queen that's under somebody else's control and knock you out of the arena. That's a dodgy investment. Don't invest your life, like I did, into a system that's not got you good at heart. Because they'll take everything. Yes, they're predators. They'll take everything. And I was told that before I was booted out. You'll lose everything, and we mean everything. Thank you very much.
How do they arrange a marriage? Do they, are you, from the time you're born, do they have that woman picked out? When is that picked out? Is there a set number of kids you're supposed to have? Because you had 3 quick.
Yep.
How does that arranged marriage work?
It's very, very subtle and clever. So when I started dating, she at the time was the hottest girl that was available, because you can only marry within the cult. She was certainly hot, no problem at all with that.
I saw in your book you said about 7 times. The hot one there, the most beautiful one there. Yeah.
And then it's done very cleverly, where her father suggested that we should get married. We've been dating for a year or whatever it was, and they suggested we get married. And I was like, well, I'm too young, and I haven't got enough money. And it just sort of came back with, well, don't worry about that, we'll buy you a house. And I said, well, no, it's not just a house, I need a car. And they were like, no. And when you're 18 and somebody says, we're going to buy you a house, we're going to buy you a car, we're going to furnish the house, we're going to give you a job with a double salary.
What are you going to do?
Exactly. You're 18. You want to leave home. You're sick and tired of your parents. Oh, I can have my own house. Very cleverly done. So and
all I got to do is marry this girl that I'm already with anyway at this time, right? I get a house, car, some income. Sign me up, right?
When we talked earlier about the Chinese and how they lend you money interest-free, that's why God put me through this on my journey, so I understand it.
Interesting.
So they get you in, they attract you in, beautiful, 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 have this, have this, have this. And then suddenly you have the house and you're a young couple without a television. So you got 3 children in 3 years. No telly.
With no television?
No telly.
Man, I'm having earplugs in.
Exactly.
I got to work. I got to work, honey. I'll be back.
Exactly. So it's very cleverly done. And then at the age of 23 with 3 kids, I was starting to ask questions. And I had my own building business there because I'd moved away from my father-in-law's business at the bedding centre, which he gave me. He helped me set up the business. He provided everything I needed. And we had this Indian restaurant. You've probably read about it, but he was a lovely guy. He used to phone me up on a Saturday night, and he'd blown up his cooker again. And he was just a really good lad, a proper good lad. And I loved going there. I loved to help him out because he's just like, I don't know what's happened again, Charlie. He's just blown up again. And all he was a good, honest, hard-working Indian who was trying to cook far too much on a little cooker. And it was flat out, and it was boom, another thermostat would go boom. So you change the thermostat, say, look, just calm down. Yeah, but I've got people, and the people loved him. And it was Saturday night when he was busy, and I'd go and repair it all, and of course I'm not allowed to eat with anybody. But because it was like 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, we got church at 6 o'clock on Sunday morning, I was thinking nobody's going to see me.
So even when you're married and you're 21, 22, you can't go have dinner with other people?
No.
What'd you guys do for a honeymoon, or there was no honeymoon?
We went to stay with another family in the religion.
Oh, boy. Some honeymoon, huh?
In Leeds.
Some honeymoon, right?
Exactly.
Sounds like a blast.
Exactly. But this was all part of the journey.
And now through this, your mom was getting shock therapy in the 60s or 70s.
Oh, back in the late 60s, early 70s, my mother.
And could you explain what shock therapy is?
Yeah, my mother, they always thought she had a mental illness. The truth is, when I look at it now, she was trying to get out of the religious cult. And nobody was helping her. She was in a place that she couldn't get out of. And I know that because I got out. So I know what she was going through. And because she was trying, and she hit the bottle, she was drinking whiskey like it was going out of fashion. And she was in and out of hospital with
Blame her?
No, exactly, with mental illnesses.
Yeah.
Because she was trying to escape the Matrix or the Plymouth Brethren or whatever. And then the religion decided that because she had these problems in her head, they thought, that what they do is they put these electro things in their head to clear the memory, in the hopes that they could reconstruct her memory.
And they're actually electrocuting her, right?
Yeah, they are.
Wow.
Yeah. And they used to do this in the 60s and 70s. They'd electrocute you to clear your mind.
Now, when your mom would come home after being electrocuted,
Yeah.
let's just say it the way it is.
She got no idea who we were.
I was going to say, did she know what planet she was on?
No, but on the good side, if we'd been naughty, she'd forgotten all about it. So that had a positive.
Hey, Mom, when are you going back?
Exactly. So, yes, it was not nice. And we were looked after by young girls a lot of the time. When my father had young girls around there that were helping in the house because my father was a hard-working, very honourable man, honest man.
Shoeman, right?
Yeah, I'm in the shoe trade.
And you never even hear of Shoeman anymore.
No. He was a good man. I still believe, he's in his mid-80s now, 86 I think he is now. 86 or 87.
What'd he eat that he made it this long?
My grandfather lasted until the late 90s.
Oh.
It's in the DNA.
Good.
All in all, he was a good man. But he just didn't have the strength of character to come out. He just went with it all the time. So that that's his own choice. I made my choice. But it was, those sort of things were fairly difficult as a child, growing up with different women around the house. In fact, one of the women who looked after us had the same name as my mum, Joan. And when my mum passed,
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he married the other Joan.
Jeez.
And I teased him even at the time. I said, on the bright side, if you wake up in the night, you'll never mess her name up, will you? So, yeah. But she looked after us as kids. I didn't know. In fact, I didn't even know when my mum died. They didn't tell me.
That's sick.
I found out through my second son. He phoned me up and he said, I think you'll find your mum died 6 months ago. I've heard from somebody.
Ugh.
And I phoned up my dad and he's going, oh yeah, we tried to reach you. And I went, you got my number.
How'd you try to reach me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He probably told a pigeon. But no. And that particular day was quite interesting because the moment I was told, I just burst into tears. And it was, I don't know if it was sadness or relief. It was one, if not both. But the penny drop that my mother had gone, I'm now sort of waiting for my dad to go because of the fact that that's sort of the last part that I feel sorry for him because of the fact that he's been brainwashed, indoctrinated, whatever. But I have prayed many, many times that God will save him because he's a good person. And as with everything, there's good people and bad in everything. There's some bad people in there. None more so than the leader of that cult right now, who's called Bruce Hales, who is about to be done in court for taking nearly $1 billion for making sure that his tribe got vaccinated, all of them. So he pumped it out in his ministry that everyone needs to get vaccinated.
$1 billion.
He took $1 billion. And they're all trying to hide that. But the one thing is, I don't need to pump it out there because God will make that clear to them. They don't watch television, they don't watch the news, but it's happened before in there where they've had corrupt leaders who've done things that were not right. Back in the 60s, James Taylor Jr. was caught in bed in Aberdeen. Was it in the 50s or 60s? Caught in bed with one of my mum's best friends, Madeline Kerr. He was caught in bed with her, and she was just comforting him, apparently. Comforting him with no clothes on.
Is
as
that
they
so?
do. Exactly. People like you and I just look at each other and go, yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so you're going to tell me that they were just comforting naked in bed.
Yeah.
In bed.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like the news.
Exactly. I don't think neuro massage it was invented in those days.
I don't think so.
Exactly.
So then you get married. You have, what, three kids, right?
Yeah.
Then you say, I've had enough of this cult thing. You leave. Wife won't leave. Then she keeps the kids from you.
Well, it's not a question of won't leave. It was on a Sunday morning, having been out with the Indians and having a meal and going to the nightclub and all the rest of it, pissed.
Good job supporting the Indians, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
They already got the Redskins taken from them.
Exactly. So they were just good guys. And they turned up at my house and said, "You got to come to church." And I've gone, "I've had enough of it. I am not coming back." So they came back after the morning service between 6 and 7. They came back at 7 o'clock and they said to my wife, "Pack your things and the kids, come. We're taking you away from him." And for the next 5 years, they took my wife and kids away, and I could only have controlled visits.
What's a controlled visit mean?
When they come, they're with you when you're having your children, so they watch what you say to them.
So you have no time just by yourself with your own kids?
No.
Huh. Who makes that rule?
They do.
Oh.
That was a tough time. But also I was 23 years old and I was not grown up at all. I was not a man, I was a boy. I look back and I wasn't a good example of a boy even then. And I think one of the most important things in life is to be honest with yourself as to what you were. I wasn't a good father. And because I hadn't grown up and I didn't know what I was doing, I was lost. And as I came out of the cult, it took me 2.5 years to find out my feet, and I landed up in prison twice.
Is that when you were talking to the guy, I forget his name, and it was about the marijuana plant?
Oh, no, that was later on.
That was later?
Yeah, that was funny. That was Toby Newth, the governor in Exeter Prison.
We got to get to that, because that's funny, and that's also in the book.
Yeah, it is.
We're going to pull up, yeah.
I went to prison twice. First time I went to prison for not paying maintenance to my wife. I was the first man in the UK to ever go to prison for that. But there was three female magistrates, and my lawyer just said, "You might as well kiss your ass goodbye. You're done.
You're done."
And I went to prison. That wasn't nice. And then when I was in there, I met some dodgy boys who taught me a few naughty things and did a few naughty things and got caught again. Because I had no moral compass and I had no direction, no nothing. I didn't know the difference between right and wrong at that stage, and it took me another 7.5 years to get my feet on the ground. And it was a very lonely time because I had no friends. I didn't know who to trust. At the start, in the first 2.5 years, I picked all the wrong people.
What's UK prison like? What was prison like in the UK?
Not nice. You're locked up for 23 hours a day in a cell that's sort of...
Just for not paying?
Yeah.
They actually, it's 23 and 1?
Yeah.
That's what they always say, 23 and 1.
Yeah,
23 and 1 for not making a payment.
Yeah.
Phew.
And I was in there for
solitary confinement.
No, because I was in with 2 other guys in a tiny little room.
Oh, okay.
That was smaller than this.
Okay, so only one person can get up at a time for 23 hours of the day.
No, well, you lay on your bed all day in there. You lay on your bed, I read books and one thing and another, and you can walk up and down your cell, which is 8 foot long, 6 foot wide, or so 3 meters by 2 meters.
Sounds like a blast.
Oh, yeah, not much fun. I was in with a guy called Malky Mullen, who was famous for stealing cars and robbing churches. I mean, he wasn't nice. There was another guy that wasn't particularly nice in there either, but...
Bet the food was good. Filet mignon, lobster?
Yeah, exactly. No, not really.
Slop.
It was awful. But then the governor of the prison realised that I shouldn't really be there. So within a short period of time, put me in the kitchen, which allowed me I was unlocked early in the morning, locked up late at night. And I could cook my own food like they all do in the kitchens, and you get reasonable food. You don't get good food, reasonable food. So
edible.
Yeah, exactly.
So then you get through all that, and then how do you end up? You end up traveling to Spain, right?
Yeah, after a period of time in the UK, I was working in the timeshare business in the UK, and I tried to get back. I got my wife out of the religion with the kids, and we realised that we didn't really have an awful lot in common, and that was quite sad, really. And a lot of this happens in life to so many people, that when you split up with somebody, all your mates want to have a go on your missus. And as much as you don't want to be with her, the last thing you want to see is your mates having a go.
Same here in the U.S., buddy.
Exactly. So the logical conclusion for me was when I had the opportunity to move to Spain, to get away. Now, there's people out there who go, you ran away. Honestly, I did. I ran away. I'm not ashamed of it. I ran away because I didn't want to see it.
I would have too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't wanted to see it either. I would have got the hell out of it and away from all of it.
And it was a help. It helped me to sort of restart my life again.
Cleared your mind, right?
Cleared your mind. I went it through a naughty phase of being out every single night with different women and everything else, and I don't regret any of it, because this was all part of the process that's brought me to where I am today.
Can you pull up tab 2? In your book, you say there's a part maybe midway through how cocky you were, that you were very cocky, and I'm thinking this guy was just in a cult, spends spends 10 years trying to get his head back together, trying to see his kids, and here this guy's going out cocky as can be. Where'd you get the cockiness from?
I'd always been put down as a child. My father used to make me stand in front of a mirror and say, "Oh, wretched man that I am," and put me down, put me down, put me down. Then I suddenly realised I was feeling depressed and everything else, and I thought, there's nobody out there that's going to pick you up other than you.
You couldn't have said it better.
And then I realised that I started telling myself that I was better than I was.
You know what, Dr. Ward? Say that again so people can hear it.
I started telling myself I was better than I actually was.
It's good stuff.
And I started making up stories that I was actually a lot better than I really was. And that helped me get out of this negative mindset. Telling myself that I was better, and by default telling other people that I was bigger and better than I was.
And I bet then you had to work. Then you had to figure out things, because now all these
I had
people
to live up to it.
You had to live up to it.
Exactly right. When you if you're going to talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk. And that was a great period in my life when I was suddenly telling people how good I was. Now I actually had to perform. And I tell you what, there's nobody out there that has the ability to talk themselves up that doesn't also have the ability to actually do it. When you realise that, I mean, it lifts you out some dark places. Because then you start going, well, I can do this. And then somebody goes, show me. Oh, shit, I've got to perform. But when you put your mind to it, you do. And that's what I did. I started, as I say in my life, fake it until you make it.
Yep, 100%.
And you talk yourself up, and then suddenly you start to believe it, and other people start to believe it. And the first time you actually talk about doing something and do it, the satisfaction when you never even thought you could is incredible. And that's how you build your self-confidence.
I've said this ad nausea, but when I was younger, I wanted this Lamborghini Gallardo. They stopped.
Well, it's now Boxing Day, and in an hour or so, I'm leaving to pick up the love of my life from Manchester Airport. In fact, Ernie Hughes, my old friend, is taking me across because Olivia is arriving in all her glory and coming in a limousine, Emirates limousine. So I'm going to go over and greet her and catch a lift. And so I've just had a shower and tried to spruce myself up. And I mean, when you're 24 years older than your bride, you've got to put your best foot forward, if you know what I mean. I've put some aftershave on for the first time for years, and put some candles in the bedroom, scented ones, and one or two downstairs. So I hope that she'll be sufficiently impressed. She likes a bit of romanticism. She's a wonderful, wonderful girl. Absolutely special. She used to be in the Brethren like me. She was in Brooklyn, New York, and shoved out for marrying a white guy. So, yeah, there's a few discriminatory practices in there, but let's not spoil the moment by dwelling on that. Richard Story here from Nottingham, another booted out member, is helping get the house ready and spruced up. And yeah, I got through. We've been in touch with each other for 2 years. It'll be 2 years in January. My divorce went through, Deborah, November 20. Who should pop up but Olivia on my Facebook, of all things. God's over the media, I'm sure. It's amazing how the message can get around through these means. I've posted just this last week a LinkedIn CV, just going over some of the things I've done in my life. Nothing very dramatic, nothing very special, because we had a very limited life in that sense. You know, we had to put all our money into the bank. We weren't allowed, it was against the rules of the religion to invest in stocks and shares. And so if you're devout and do what you're told, you think things will come good, but no. You try your best to be a good PB. And, you know, I put my heart and soul into that religion. But it devastated my parents when I left at 16. I didn't know any better. And then, of course, it devastates me when I leave at 61. But, hey, I put a lot in. I put in, you know, a lot of investment. I invested my life, my soul, my spirit into that religion. And it's absolutely heartbreaking to realise they've been sniggering. The more money you give, the more they snigger behind your back. Not all of them. I hasten to say that. But the leaders. But I love generous people. I took readings in there of free-hearted liberality. I love giving. I love people. When my parents wrote in March 73 to come back, I was rejoicing. But then it went to the leader's times and he spat on the ground and didn't allow it. So the divided family carried on. And then, you know, when my mother was dying, poor father, he came in, poor father, he came in as a bright young, I think he came in at 16, I think, same age as I got converted. And it was a reasonable religion then, good enough. He didn't expect what happened, but by the time he was, I think 39, maybe 40, he was had the same treatment as me, booted back to the back row and then withdrawn from it. He wasn't shut up as far as I remember. I think my mother was when he was withdrawn from, but then she was withdrawn from a couple of weeks later for going out to see Angus Clapham, reaching out to someone who hadn't excommunicated her. I reached out to a business associate, someone I thought I trusted, because you're absolutely devastated and you wonder what's happening to you. Richard's story, I hope he'll tell his story. He was put in a homeless hostel. Ernie Hughes, gypsy camp. And this is by wealthy brethren, the Thomases of Doncaster. Chris Thomas married a Dallow. Mike Thomas married an Edwards from Leeds. I just cannot understand why they were so mean to fathers who, yeah, they may have failed. We all fail in one way or another, but not seriously, nothing to merit that treatment. Christ died for our sins anyway. We can have them forgiven. So rather than pulverise and punish and rob our people, just be kind and understand that you could have failed just as much as Ernie, Richard or myself. And so it needs a lot of care and understanding and kindness and love when that happens. And, you know, you make a clean breast of things. You think that that's the thing to do. And you do that with the Lord, though. What I've had to learn, you don't do it with priests. Certainly not priests in the PBCC. No, because they tell lies and they're corrupt and they spread bad, dirty washing around, which is a complete violation of all scriptural principles. And why do they do it? To defame you, so that the brethren all think you're a bad guy. But then, you know, here we are starting a new life here at Noblethorpe Hall. And yesterday the neighbours, lovely. They're not going to have any religion interfering in them. 3 generations. Lovely, lovely people. And they realised I was on my own and had me round to join in all the festivities. You can't ask more than that, can you? And of course, oh, but you're one of the brethren. No, I'm not. So I can go there, yeah. But all this separation stuff, it was designed to ruin lives and ruin families and ruin you psychologically. And the whole rules are you can't go for further education. So you're left a novice and potentially very, very vulnerable. A lot of people have taken me for a ride on money, yeah, ex-brethren, yes, because they've been abused. So they're abusers themselves, absolutely. So I'm sympathetic, but it shouldn't happen. You should have enough moral platform about you not to take advantage of people who are kind. And people do it very, very, very cleverly. You know, they come along with a big sob story of what situation they're in and how hard it's been. And of course it draws out your sympathies and your compassion. But I always believed in putting my money where my mouth was. In other words, if people were struggling, I would give. And I did that in the brethren, because I couldn't bear to think of people suffering and struggling. But Bruce Hales and Garth and a whole host of hierarchy are happy to see me suffering and others suffering. No, they should be coming to the rescue of any that have failed, because they're sinners. We're all sinners. We all come short of the glory of God. And I don't feel like a sinner. I think it's very interesting that many are protesting about this strong edict issued by the PBC that you've got to say every morning, "Oh, wicked man that I am, oh, wretched man that I am." That makes you feel pretty shit about yourself, doesn't it? So we're challenging that, and we're saying, realise your worth. Realise your worth, and don't be trapped in a situation that's beneath your dignity. Don't join in with a whole lot of other people, like a band, a gang, like the mafia, and ruin people's lives, because it's just not like Christ at all. It's from the pit. It's from the devil, quite frankly. And I try and be measured in what I say. You know, my father, I've always been very careful not to tell lies in my life, because my father was withdrawn from for the spirit of lying in September 1972. So, of course, weren't your fathers pointed also, I was told that Sir Simonton said that he was the most ambitious man in Christendom. So I've been careful not to be ambitious. So through my life, and I think it's worked. I'm where I am, about to start a new life, but we've got a moral bond. Olivia and I, it's not just that she's flipping nice and we're going to love each other. She's absolutely rock solid. She's a super mother. She's got 3 super kids. She's brought up pretty single-handedly. And she's taught them morals, and they are rock solid in the faith. And they're great fun, fantastic fun. And they're chilling out now. They realise that I'm going to be their dad, so to speak. And so they're actually chilling out and thawing out. It's lovely. I just love family. I love the expression, the free expression in family, where you can say what you want to say, where you can just make yourself vulnerable. Bad people, predators take advantage of vulnerable people. Lovers of Christ, lovers of Jesus, and people who love don't. They actually come to the rescue of people who are going through a difficult time. And that's my appeal, really. If you're a true Christian, you'll reach out, you'll get out of your comfort zone, reach out and contact people that are suffering, that are struggling, that are going through the discipline of perhaps losing a loved one or getting near death. If you're carrying on with criminal activity, you can't comfort anybody when they're dying. No, you can't. You're hollow, you're shallow, and you're in a make-believe situation, and you will not be able to impart anything. Well, I hope I've said enough to appeal to the depths of people's souls so that they review their ways if they're causing any hurt to anyone else. Well, I'm just about to leave with Ernie Hughes from Doncaster with his taxi service to Manchester Airport to pick my darling up and bring her back here. Richard Story here, another ex-brother. We all used to be in the cult. Is here, just been sprucing the house up, doing one or two little repairs. I've been out sweeping leaves. Wow, I've got to make an effort, haven't I, for this wonderful lady. So, hey, we work together, ex-brethren. Although we've been kicked out and had a rough deal, we survive, we're survivors. And we help each other, and that's what life's all about. And that's what life should be all about. And we just love it. It's not a matter of money and all that sort of stuff. Money's useful, but it's just that comradeship, if you like, that kindredness, that just want to do the best for everybody. And that's what life's all about. Ernie, what do you say?
Yeah, it's been a rough ride, 32 years, 31 and a half years before my ex-wife finally said what she did. Well, times moved on. I was homeless for 6 or 7 weeks. I lived in a hotel. I was then in a temporary accommodation in a 1-bedroom bungalow, and now, just this last week, I got my own premises, a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex in Doncaster. Everything's out of storage. There's masses of boxes at the moment because I've not even had a chance to go back because I've been so busy helping others. But you know what? I've gained some friends which I didn't even expect to have. And you know what? One of them, believe it or not, I speak virtually every day to President Trump of America. I have a special private channel with him, and I speak with him every day. There we are. Mm-hmm. That's a surprise, isn't it?
That's it, it surprised me.
That's a surprise, but it's true. Good. Absolutely true.
Good. Good.
Bless you all, and praise God, we'll have a safe journey there and back from the airport.
And we trust that all these walls, these barriers of division will all come down.
Absolutely.
So you can speak to your ex-wife, and you know whether you go back with her is up to her, really. But she did indicate she'd like to get you back. But all these religious barriers, which are saying the brethren are good and we're bad, it's quite frankly, we're survivors. Yeah. We're not as bad as you make out. We're all right. We're doing all right. We're getting through. By the skin of our teeth, perhaps, but we are getting through. Richard, what do you say? Sorry, you were going to say something?
All I was going to say was this. The greatest judge of all the earth is the Lord Jesus. And the so-called priestly people have already said that they wouldn't unchristianize me, and they know my destination is in heaven. That's not by them or me. That's by the Lord Jesus himself. And the assembly, as they call it, or the church, belongs to him. And yet his church, as they call it, don't want to see me at all. How can you equate the judge of all the earth, who has given me a place in heaven by grace, and his church rejects me? Something totally wrong.
It raises the question whether it is really the church.
Exactly. It does.
It's turned into a business.
Yeah, it has.
Which is why they can be ruthless and chuck you out, just like can sack people from work. Yeah. It's that bad.
Yeah.
Richard.
Bless you.
Well, so I left the exclusive some 20 odd years ago. And Lance kindly, of recent times, in the last 3 months, due to unforeseen circumstances, I I was visiting Lance, and he kindly offered me a room and a private bathroom, to which I've been here for 3+ months now. I have since found a place to live of my own, but yeah. So the goodness of God in friendship and friendship after leaving the brethren is paramount, and it's through having to do with like-minded persons and persons that we know, persons that have gone through the same trauma as we have, that understand us.
And we don't judge, do we? We don't judge one another. No. We've come from a very judgmental system.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
And due to a different life and due to the circumstances, things can happen to anyone, regardless of who we are or where we've been or what we are as people today. Life changes, but generally it changes for the better, and that's the goodness that I can see, is the fact that despite I wouldn't wish my life on anybody, the fact of it, the hardship at times, but it's made me as a person, and I've seen a different life, and I've seen a different side to people, and also I respect people in a different light to how I was brought up. There's more to life than me.
Absolutely. Well, it's very good, and just to say that we believe that there should be reconciliation between the ex-brethren and the brethren, and that means that the brethren will have to humble themselves, quite simply, and it's not easy. I mean, Ernie and Richard and myself, we've all been very humbled or humiliated deliberately by a system and people running a system. We've been actually terribly, terribly treated, but we've survived. We've come through just thanks to the mercy of God. But we're really saying that the Bible is very clear. The down and outs, whatever you want to call us, they reached out to Christ, found salvation. He didn't discriminate between one and another and say, you're not worthy and you are. He was available to all. And that's the glory of the glad tidings. And we're just recipients of divine grace and divine mercy. And if we've got a bit more than another, well, we want to share. We want to share. We have to be sensible. We have to, we're not judgmental, as I said, but we will, I've pulled you up a few times, haven't I, Richard? You know, it's not been easy come, easy go, exactly. And that's what friends do. They're faithful to one another. If we let one another down, we tell each other straight. The love is not lost. The division doesn't come because we're friends. That's love. Divine love doesn't falter, even if we fail, does it?
No.
And we can reflect that in a simple way, do you think?
Yeah. Well, it's covenant upon us to display that.
Very good. Well, we'll have to get off to the airport. So I'm going to meet this wonderful, wonderful wife of mine and bring her back here. She's come from a warm Australian summer into a cold English winter. But it says something about a commitment, doesn't it? Coming all this way around the world to meet a chap like me, eh? Wow! She couldn't make more of a statement. I feel very, very honoured. And I'm jolly well going to look after this young lady. And, Garth Christie has said that I was nasty to my previous wife. I would rather hear that from my previous wife, thank you very much. But of course it suits their programme to say that I've been nasty to my wife. Olivia loves me already because she saw how lovely I was to my wife, and she will tell you about that. So Olivia and Garth can't both be right. So Garth needs to just look at himself. How good is he to his wife? He's prepared to judge me as not being good to my wife, but in actual fact, it's the religion that came and broke up our relationship. But it's all things work together for good. I'm not crying over spilt milk. I'm moving on. The Lord's coming for me in a remarkable way, and I'm very thankful.